Amen. Let's talk about seeds. I think especially being in our culture, our people, they really, really love their seeds. I'm pretty sure right now, it's not as terribly cold as it could have been. So I'm sure many of our uncles and aunties are already anticipating with great joy what seeds they're going to be planting as soon as that snow melts. Where all those things, right? Where you're gonna all that stuff, right? Because we take our crops very, very seriously. There's a great deal of pride that comes in that. And there are such things as good seeds and bad seeds. If you plant a good seed, is it just going to grow by itself? What do you have to do? You have to fertilize it, you have to feed it, you have to nurture it, you have to water it. It has to be given some sunlight. All these things have to happen, and then, God willing, maybe that seed will grow. And you'll be able to benefit from the fruits of that seed that you had planted. Bad seeds also exist. And bad seeds can also be planted. And bad seeds can grow. And you get weeds, and then you get bad fruit. This idea about seeds is very important to us. From the epistle that was read from Hebrews, one very important thing was mentioned. This idea about the first part of that was this, the whole chapter is Hebrews 11 is all about faith. But that particular section that was read today was about the faith of Moses. And that's a very interesting seed of faith that's planted there with Moses. I don't know if you heard it very carefully or not. Before even Moses himself was mentioned, there was two very important people that were mentioned. Not by name, but they were mentioned. They said before Moses, it said by faith, Moses was hidden because of who? His parents. Right, his parents hid him. It said Moses was hidden by faith of his parents because they looked at him and they saw him and they knew that he was a gift. Because at that time, we know from the story, at that time, the Egyptians were becoming very unhappy with the Hebrews. And they wanted to minimize their population, so they started, an edict went out from Pharaoh to kill all these boys. So that they couldn't have any more kids, at least for a while, to control that population. But his parents looked at him, and with that faith, they were able to keep him alive, even though it meant probably, in their eyes, certain death. Because you were defying the Pharaoh. But that seed was planted. And for many of us, especially those of us who have kids, or if we mentor somebody, or if there's someone that looks up to us, well, that means there's probably all of us here. Each of us were planting seeds. And we're planting seeds of faith. And it's up to us. We're the ones, when you plant that seed, we're the ones who have to water that seed. We're the ones who have to fertilize it, to feed it. We're the ones who have to show it some light. Otherwise, that faith that we plant in our kids is not going to bear good fruit. And even in today's gospel, it's not the parents who planted the seed this time. It's their son. When they couldn't find him, they looked all around for him, and 3 days, so imagine this, right? You're these parents. Your son goes missing one day, and you don't really realize it. You're on this one whole day journey. So one whole day goes by, and you just assume he's with your friends and relatives. At the end of the day, you go looking for him, and he's not there. So it's already been one whole day. And then you trek back over to Jerusalem, and then how many more days do they spend looking for him? How many more days? Who's paying attention? You weren't paying that much attention. 3? Okay, let's say 3, because I read it. So 3, right? 3 more days they looked for him. So a total of how many days has Christ been missing now? 4 days. 4 days. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 days, right? Finally, on that 4th day, they find him and he's in the temple. And of course, there he is doing his business. As he said, his father, he's teaching them with this authority that no one understands how this small child of like 12 years old can really understand all these things that's going on. It is speaking with this authority. And he planted that seed in them, in his mother's heart. Because it says, when he said this, they did not understand his statement when he spoke. And he went down to them, Nazareth, and was subject to them, but his mother kept all these things in her heart. It was a seed that was planted in her heart. And St. Luke uses this term a lot. It was planted in her heart. It was believed in our church tradition that St. Luke was either an early acquaintance of St. Mary, or that he was one of the early church fathers who was also part of the care for St. Mary after the crucifixion and the ascension, and before her dormition. Because St. Luke is the first person who ever painted an icon, wrote an icon of St. Mary. And so this idea that he kept it in the heart, if she kept it in her heart, how are we supposed to know that? So the idea is that the church fathers believe that St. Luke was given that information from St. Mary herself, all these things that she kept in her heart. And so imagine that seed being planted. Christ himself planted that seed. And he planted his church. And he planted that same seed into all of us. And now Moses had that same seed planted in him, although he didn't completely understand it. All the people that are talked about in Hebrews 11, go back and read the whole chapter of Hebrews 11. There's a lot of people who are mentioned from creation all the way down to all the lineage of the Hebrews. And they're all mentioned because they all have that same faith. But for a lot of them, that faith, they didn't understand it. That seed, they didn't quite get it. But we do. Because Christ himself gave it to us. He gave us the fullness of that promise. It even says all those folks in the Hebrews, they didn't quite get the full promise. They didn't quite understand it. It wasn't completely revealed to them like it's been revealed to us. But here he is. He's expounding on the scriptures, explaining it to the people. This child is explaining to all the people. And he's given us that same promise and said, look, these scriptures are about me. He's not going out and saying that right here when he's age 12, but he goes on later. Later, after the ascension, we know that story, where he goes back and he goes through all the prophets and all the law and shows how all the scriptures were really about him. And he gave us that seed. And we take that seed and we plant it into every single one of the people that we run across. And especially those people whom we have influence over. Especially our kids. Especially our kids. And now we as parents have to look at that seed that we've planted into our children and wonder, am I allowing that seed to thrive, to flourish? Am I feeding it? Am I showing it some light? Or am I starving, showing it darkness? So that the seed that grows isn't a great fruit-bearing tree, but a sickly weed. We have to ask ourselves that question. All of us who have someone who looks up to us, all of us who have influence over other people, all of us who have care of other people, we all have that responsibility. And Christ planted that same seed in us, and we can either water it, we can fertilize it, we can nourish it, or we can kill it. That seed has been planted in each and every single one of us. And just like Mary, she kept all those things in her heart. We too have to keep all those things in our hearts. But allow it to grow. And allow it to flourish. And especially for those of us who are parents, and the seed that we plant when our kids are young, little kids, we don't know what that tree is going to look like many, many years later. We don't know when the fruits are going to be, when the fruits are going to come, and when they're going to be able to harvest those fruits. It's going to be many, many, many years later. But that's the essence of faith. And if you go back and read Hebrews 11:1, it's exactly that first thing, right? Faith is the evidence of things not known, the hope of things that are not seen. These things that we don't know, that we can't see, but that's where faith comes in. So we plant this seed, and God willing, and just like St. Paul said, one person plants a seed, one person waters it, but in the end, who makes it grow? God. God makes it grow. So allow this seed to be planted in us. Allow it to be nourished. And God willing, allow it to grow. All praise and thanks be to the Blessed Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, now and always and forever and ever.